Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars through the main viewport. His weathered hands gripped the railing as he studied the scanner readings. Something was approaching their position in the outer rim. Territories, and it was big. "Captain, we have multiple contacts on long-range sensors," reported Lieutenant Lisa Hayes from the tactical station. Her fingers danced across the control panel as she tried to get a better reading. Unknown configuration. "Sir, nothing in our database matches these signatures." Morrison nodded slowly. After 15 years commanding vessels in deep space, he had learned to trust his instincts. Something about this felt different from the usual patrol runs. The hair on the back of his neck was standing up, and that usually meant trouble. "How many ships are we looking at, Hayes?" he asked, keeping his voice calm and steady. "Best estimate is 7 vessels, Captain. They're holding position about 50,000 kilometers out. They seem to be scanning us." Chief Engineer Ben Carter looked up from his station at the back of the bridge. "Captain, I'm picking up some kind of energy beam focused on our hull. It's not harmful, but it's definitely probing our systems." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. Unknown. Aliens were scanning his ship, and he didn't like it one bit. The Defiance was a Titan-class battlecruiser, one of the most advanced warships in the Earth fleet. She carried enough firepower to level a small moon, and her crew of 300 was trained for combat in the harshest conditions imaginable. "Red. Alert," Morrison ordered. "All hands to battle stations. Raise shields and charge weapons, but do not target the alien vessels. We're going to play this nice and easy." The bridge lighting shifted to red as alarms echoed through the corridors. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing exactly what to do. Within minutes, the Defiance was ready for battle. Meanwhile, 50,000 kilometers away, Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Exploration Fleet studied the readings coming from their scanning array. The alien vessel was unlike anything in their extensive database of known civilizations. It was massive, heavily armored, and bristling with what appeared to be weapon systems. "Science Officer Krell, what are you finding?" Vextar asked, his forearms folded behind his back as he waited for the report. Krell's large eyes widened as more data flowed across his screens. "Commander, this is extraordinary. The vessel appears to be designed entirely for warfare. Every system we can detect seems to serve some combat function. Elaborate. Their power core is running at what should be dangerous levels for any reasonable species. The energy output is being channeled into weapons arrays, defensive systems, and what appears to be some kind of kinetic barrier system. Commander, they have enough firepower to threaten our entire fleet." Vextar's skin changed color slightly, a sign of concern among his people. The Zephyrians were explorers and traders, not warriors. They had encountered many species in their travels across the galaxy, but none had ever built ships with such obvious aggressive intent. "Continue the scan. I want to know everything about these beings." Back on the Defiance, Morrison was growing impatient. The alien ships had been sitting there for 20 minutes, just scanning. His crew was ready for action, but the aliens seemed content to simply observe. "Captain," Hayes called out, "I'm detecting communication attempts. They're trying multiple frequencies. Put it on speakers." The bridge filled with a series of clicks, whistles, and electronic tones. Morrison frowned. "Can we translate any of that?" "Working on it, sir," reported Communications Officer Amy Bell. "The computer is analyzing the patterns. Give me a few minutes." Morrison walked to the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. He had fought pirates, rebels, and hostile alien species before, but this felt different. These weren't raiders or conquerors. They seemed genuinely curious about humanity, which somehow made them more dangerous. "Captain," Carter called from his station, "their scanning beam is getting more intensive. They're probing deeper into our systems." "How deep?" "They're reading our power signatures, weapons configurations, even our crew complement." "Sir, they know exactly what we're capable of." Morrison's eyes narrowed. Information was power in any conflict, and these aliens were gathering a lot of it. "Can we block their scans?" "Not without going to full combat status, sir." "Our jammers would be seen as an act of aggression." The captain considered his options. He could order an attack, but that would likely start a war with an unknown species. He could try to run, but the Defiance was a warship, not a courier vessel. Running would show weakness, and Morrison had never backed down from a fight in his life. Hayes, are our weapons locked on target? Yes, sir. All batteries are ready to fire on your command. Good. Maintain targeting solutions, but hold fire unless they make an aggressive move. On the Zephyrian command ship, Science Officer Krell was becoming increasingly disturbed by what he was finding. The deeper their scans went, the more horrifying the human vessel became. Commander, you need to see this, Krell said, his voice shaking. Slightly. These beings have weaponized everything. Their life support systems can be converted to chemical weapons. Their reactor can be overloaded to create a massive explosion. Even their medical bay is designed to keep fighters operational in combat conditions. Vexstar moved closer to the science station. What do you mean by weaponized everything? Look at these readings. They have backup systems for their backup systems. If their main weapons fail, they can use their engines as weapons. If their engines fail, they can use their life support as weapons. Commander, this ship is designed to fight until it's completely destroyed. What about the crew? That's the most disturbing part. The biological readings show they're fragile compared to most species we've encountered. They should be using their technology to protect themselves, but instead, they've built their ship to maximize damage output. It's as if they care more about destroying their enemies than preserving their own lives. Vexstar felt a chill run through his body. In all his years of exploration, he had never encountered a species that seemed so dedicated to warfare. Most civilizations built their ships for exploration, trade, or defense. These humans had built theirs for one purpose: killing. Continue the scan. I want to understand these creatures before we make contact. Back on the Defiance, Morrison was growing tired of the waiting game. His crew was ready for action, and every minute they spent sitting still was a minute the aliens could be preparing an attack. Captain, Bell called out, I think I've got something. The computer has identified patterns in their communications. It looks like they're trying to establish a translation matrix. How long before we can talk to them? Maybe another 10 minutes, sir. Morrison nodded. 10 minutes was an eternity in a combat situation, but it might be worth the wait. If these aliens wanted to talk, maybe they could resolve this without bloodshed. If they wanted to fight, well, the Defiance was ready for that too. The captain looked around his bridge at his crew. They were good people, all of them. Hayes had joined the fleet to explore the stars, but had proven herself to be an excellent tactical officer. Carter had turned down a comfortable job in the core worlds to serve on the frontier. Bell had a gift for languages that had helped them communicate with dozens of species. They trusted him to keep them safe, and he would do whatever it took to bring them home, even if it meant going to war with an entire alien fleet. The scan continued, and with each passing second, both sides learned more about each other. The humans discovered that the aliens had powerful technology, but seemed reluctant to use it aggressively. The aliens discovered that humans had turned warfare into an art form, building ships and training crews for one purpose: victory at any cost. Neither side yet understood that they were about to witness something that would change both their civilizations forever. The humans were about to show the galaxy what it meant to fight like an apex predator. The aliens were about to learn why humanity had clawed its way to the stars despite every obstacle the universe had thrown at them. The scanning beam continued its work, peeling back layer after layer of the Defiance's systems. With each new discovery, the aliens grew more horrified by what they had found. They had expected to encounter another peaceful species exploring the cosmos. Instead, they had found something that would haunt their dreams for years to come. The humans waited, ready for whatever came next. Science Officer Krell stared at his display screen in complete shock. The data flowing from their deep scan of the human vessel was beyond anything he had ever encountered in his 20 years of exploration. His hands shook as he tried to process what he was seeing. Commander Vexstar, Krell called out, his voice barely above a whisper. You need to see this immediately. Vexstar moved quickly to the science station, his four arms moving in nervous patterns. The readings on the screen made no sense to him at first. "Explain what I am looking at, Krell." "Sir, these humans have built their ship to be a weapon of mass destruction, but not in the way we would expect. They have not just added weapons to a normal ship. They have made the entire ship into a weapon." Vexstar studied the complex diagrams showing the internal structure of the human vessel. "I do not understand." Krell pointed to different sections of the display. "Look at their engine systems. Normal beings would build engines to move their ships safely through space. These humans have built their engines so they can be used as weapons. If their main guns fail, they can point their ship at an enemy and use their engines to create a massive explosion. That would destroy their own ship." "Exactly. They are willing to destroy themselves to destroy their enemies, but it gets worse, Commander." Krell switched to another display showing the ship's life support systems. Their air recycling system can be converted to create poisonous gas. Their water supply can be turned into acid. Their medical systems are designed not to heal, but to keep warriors fighting even when they are badly wounded. Vexstar felt his skin change color again, this time to a deep purple that indicated extreme distress. "Are you telling me that every system on their ship can be used as a weapon?" "Yes, Commander, and more than that. They have backup systems for everything. If their main power fails, they have 3 different backup power sources. If their weapons are destroyed, they can make new weapons from spare parts. If their hull is breached, they have repair systems that can fix damage while they are still fighting." The commander stared at the data in growing horror. The Zephyrians built their ships to explore and trade. They had weapons for defense, but the idea of turning every system into a tool of war was completely alien to them. "What about the crew?" Vexstar asked. "How do they survive in such a dangerous environment?" Krell brought up biological readings from the human ship. "This is perhaps the most disturbing discovery of all. The humans are physically weak compared to most species we have encountered. They have thin skin, fragile bones, and limited natural healing abilities. By all logic, they should be building ships to protect themselves, but they are not. No, Commander. They have chosen to make themselves more dangerous instead of safer. Look at these readings from their medical bay. They have drugs that can keep a wounded human fighting for hours. They have surgical tools that can repair damage quickly so the human can return to battle. They treat their own bodies like weapons that need maintenance." Vexstar moved away from the science station and walked to the main view screen. The human ship hung in space before them, looking deceptively normal from the outside. But now he knew the truth. Inside that hull was a level of violence and destruction that his people had never imagined possible. "Commander," called out Communications Officer Thel from across the bridge, "we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel. They are requesting communication." Vexstar hesitated. Part of him wanted to order his fleet to retreat immediately. These humans were clearly too dangerous to interact with. But another part of him needed to understand what kind of species could create such horror. "Put them on screen," he ordered. The view screen flickered and showed the bridge of the human ship. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center, his hands clasped behind his back. His face was calm, but Vexstar could see the readiness for violence in his eyes. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Defiance," the human said. "You have been scanning our vessel for over an hour. I think it is time we talked." Vexstar stepped forward. "I am Commander Vexstar of the Zephyrian Exploration Fleet. We mean no harm. We were simply trying to understand your technology." Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "And what did you learn?" The question caught Vexstar off guard. How could he explain what they had discovered without starting a war? "We learned that your people are very different from ours." "Different how?" Vexstar looked back at Krell, who was still staring at his readings in shock. "Your ship is built for war. Every system, every component seems designed for battle." Morrison nodded. "The Defiance is a warship. She was built to fight and to win. But at what cost? Our scans show that you have sacrificed safety for firepower. Your crew is in constant danger. Danger is part of life, Morrison replied. We accept it because the alternative is defeat. And humans do not accept defeat. On the Zephyrian ship, Science Officer Krell had continued his analysis of the human vessel. What he found next made his blood run cold. Commander, he whispered urgently, there is something else. The humans have contingency plans for if their ship is captured. Vexstar muted the communication channel. What kind of contingency plans? Self-destruction. Systems, multiple ones. If enemies board their ship, they can destroy it in at least 6 different ways. They would rather die than surrender. That is madness. There is more. The self-destruction systems are designed to cause maximum damage to enemy ships nearby. Even in death, they try to take their enemies with them? Vexstar reopened the communication channel. Morrison was still waiting patiently, as if he had all the time in the world. Captain Morrison, Vexstar said carefully, may I ask about your people's history? How did you come to build ships like this? Morrison's expression grew serious. Earth is not a peaceful world, Commander. We have fought wars for thousands of years. We have fought against nature, against each other, and against anyone who tried to conquer us. We learned early that the universe is a dangerous place, and only the strong survive. But surely there must be some limit to the violence. Some point where you choose peace over war. Peace is something you earn through strength, Morrison replied. We want peace, Commander, but we will only have it on our terms. On the science station, Krell made another disturbing discovery. Commander, I am detecting unusual energy signatures from the human crew themselves. What do you mean? They appear to be enhanced. Genetic modifications, cybernetic implants, chemical treatments. They have turned their own bodies into weapons. Vexstar felt sick. The humans had not just weaponized their ship and their technology. They had weaponized themselves. Captain Morrison, Vexstar said, your people seem to have embraced war as a way of life. Do you never tire of fighting? Morrison considered the question. We fight because we must. But we also fight because we are good at it. Humans have one advantage over every other species we have encountered. What advantage is that? We refuse to give up. No matter how bad things get, no matter how many of us die, we keep fighting. We adapt, we learn, and we come back stronger. Behind Morrison, Vexstar could see other human crew members at their stations. They all had the same look in their eyes. The look of predators ready to strike. Commander, Krell said quietly, I recommend we withdraw immediately. These humans are unlike anything we have encountered. They are not explorers or traders. They are warriors, and they have built their entire civilization around the concept of war. Vexstar looked at the human captain on the screen. Morrison was still waiting calmly, but Vexstar could sense the violence lurking beneath the surface. These humans were apex predators, and they had somehow managed to reach the stars. Captain Morrison, Vexstar said, we thank you for this communication. We will be departing shortly. Morrison nodded. Safe travels, Commander, but remember what you have learned here today. Humans are willing to be friends, but we are also ready to be enemies. The choice is yours. The communication ended, and Vexstar stared at the blank screen. His entire understanding of the universe had changed in the space of a few hours. Somewhere out there was a species that had turned warfare into an art form, and they were expanding into the galaxy. Set course for home, Vexstar ordered. Maximum speed. The Council needs to know what we have discovered. As the Zephyrian fleet prepared to leave, Science Officer Krell continued to study the readings from the human ship. Every new piece of data confirmed his worst fears. The humans were not just another species exploring the galaxy. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors who had learned to thrive in the darkness between the stars. And they were coming. Commander Vexstar could not sleep. 3 days had passed since the encounter with the human warship, and his mind kept returning to what they had discovered. The Zephyrian fleet was halfway home, but he had ordered his science teams to continue. Analyzing every piece of data they had collected. Science officer Krell entered the commander's quarters carrying a datapad. His large eyes were bloodshot from lack of rest, and his normally steady hands trembled slightly. Commander, we have decoded more of their communication signals. What we found explains everything about these humans, but it also makes them far more terrifying than we first thought. Vexstar sat up in his sleeping alcove. Show me. Krell activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. Images and text began flowing across the projection. We intercepted historical data from their ship's computer. The humans call their world Earth, and its history is unlike anything in our records. The display showed a blue and green planet, beautiful from space. But as Krell manipulated the controls, the images changed to show the surface. Cities in ruins, battlefields covered with bodies, weapons of incredible destruction being used against the planet itself. Commander, these humans have been at war for their entire recorded history. Not just occasional conflicts like most species experience, but constant brutal warfare. They have fought each other, their environment, and everything else on their planet. Vexstar studied the images with growing horror. How did they survive as a species? That is what makes them so dangerous. They did not just survive, they became stronger. Look at this data about their evolution. The holographic display shifted to show biological information. Most species evolve to become more peaceful as they develop intelligence. Cooperation helps them build civilizations, but humans evolve differently. They kept their predator instincts while developing advanced intelligence. Krell highlighted specific genetic markers. They have enhanced reflexes for combat, improved pattern recognition for detecting threats, and brain chemistry that actually rewards them for taking risks. They are literally built for war. But surely they must have periods of peace? They do, but they use those periods to prepare for the next war. Look at this historical timeline. The display showed thousands of years of human history. Even during times marked as peaceful, there were indicators of military development, training exercises, and preparation for future conflicts. They have a saying, Krell continued. If you want peace, prepare for war. They never stop getting ready to fight. Vexstar walked closer to the holographic display. One image showed humans in primitive conditions, fighting wild animals with crude weapons. Another showed them in advanced cities, building weapons capable of destroying entire planets. They adapted to every challenge their world threw at them. Krell explained. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plague, famine, floods. Each disaster made the survivors stronger and more determined. What about their technology? Where did they learn to weaponize everything? Krell switched to technical data. They developed their technology through warfare. Every major advancement in their history came from military needs. They learned to make fire to fight cold and predators. They learned metallurgy to make better weapons. They developed chemistry to make explosives. Even their space program began as a way to deliver weapons across vast distances. The display showed rockets launching from Earth. These were originally designed as weapons of war. Only later did they modify them for exploration. Vexstar felt a chill run through his body. So when they reached space, they brought their warfare with them. Exactly, but there is something else, Commander. Something that explains why they built their ship the way they did. Krell brought up communication logs from the human vessel. We intercepted personal messages between crew members. They talk about their families, their hopes, their fears. They are not mindless killers. They are intelligent beings who choose to fight. I do not understand. Listen to this message from Captain Morrison to his family on Earth. The holographic display played an audio recording. Morrison's voice filled the room, speaking in the human language, but with translation text appearing below. Sarah, I know this mission is dangerous, but someone has to explore these frontier regions. If we find hostile aliens out here, we need to be ready to stop them before they threaten Earth. I would rather die fighting in space than let our enemies reach our homeworld. Vexstar listened to more recordings. The humans talked about protecting their families, their planet, their way of life. They were not fighting for conquest or glory. They were fighting for survival. They believe the universe is full of threats, Krell explained. Their history taught them that anything unknown could be dangerous, so they prepare for the worst possible scenario. But that level of paranoia should have destroyed them. It nearly did, several times. But they learned to channel their aggressive instincts. They fight external threats together instead of just fighting each other. The display showed images of humans working together, building massive space stations and fleets of warships. Despite their violent nature, they had found ways to cooperate on a scale that amazed the Zephyrian observers. Commander, there is one more thing. We detected something in their crew's biological readings that we initially dismissed as equipment malfunction. What did you find? Enhanced stress hormones, elevated heart rates, increased neural activity. At first we thought they were afraid. But after analyzing their behavior patterns, we realized the truth. They were excited. Vexstar stared at his science officer. Excited about what? About meeting us. About the possibility of first contact. But also about the possibility of combat. These humans actually enjoy the challenge of fighting against unknown opponents. The commander sat down heavily. Everything Krell was telling him painted a picture of a species unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. Most civilizations became less violent as they advanced. The humans had become more efficiently violent while maintaining their intelligence and creativity. Show me more about their military capabilities. Krell switched to tactical analysis. Their ship carries enough firepower to destroy our entire fleet. But that is not what makes them dangerous. What makes them dangerous is how they think about combat. The display showed human military manuals and training materials. They study warfare like we study science. They have thousands of years of recorded battles, strategies, and tactics. They learn from every conflict and constantly improve their methods. Look at this combat doctrine, Krell continued. They call it asymmetric warfare. When facing a superior enemy, they do not try to match their strength. Instead, they find weaknesses and exploit them ruthlessly. Vexstar studied the tactical information. The humans had developed ways to fight enemies with better technology, larger numbers, or superior positions. They specialized in turning disadvantages into advantages. They also have something they call combined arms tactics. They coordinate different types of weapons and units to multiply their effectiveness. A human force is always more dangerous than the sum of its parts. But surely there are limits to their aggression? That is what worries me most, Commander. We found records of something they call total war. When humans decide an enemy must be completely defeated, they commit their entire civilization to the conflict. They will sacrifice anything, including their own lives, to achieve victory. The display showed images from human history. Cities being evacuated, factories converted to weapons production, civilians training for combat. Entire populations mobilizing. For war, they have a concept called scorched earth tactics. If they cannot hold territory, they destroy it so their enemies cannot use it. They would rather rule over ruins than be conquered. Vexstar stood up and walked to the viewport. Outside, space looked peaceful and empty. But now he knew that somewhere out there, a species of apex predators was expanding into the galaxy. Krell, in your professional opinion, what should we tell the Council? The science officer was quiet for a long moment. Commander, I believe we have encountered something unprecedented. These humans are not just another species exploring space. They are a force of nature that has learned to use technology. Explain. Most species develop civilization to escape their natural limitations. Humans develop civilization to enhance their natural abilities. They are still predators, but now they are predators with starships and weapons of mass destruction. Vexstar nodded slowly. And they are expanding into our part of the galaxy. Yes, Commander. And based on their history, they will not be stopped by obstacles, threats, or even superior forces. They will adapt, learn, and keep coming. The commander looked back at the holographic display, which was now showing a map of human space. It was growing larger every year as they built new colonies and explored new regions. "Prepare a full report for the Council," Vexstar ordered. "They need to understand what we have discovered. The galaxy is about to change, and we need to decide if these humans will be our allies or our greatest enemy." As Krell left to prepare the report, Vexstar remained at the viewport. The encounter with the human warship had lasted only a few hours, but it had changed everything. The Zephyrians had always believed that intelligence led to peace. The humans had proven that intelligence could also lead to more efficient warfare. The Zephyrian Council chamber was filled with nervous energy. Commander Vexstar stood before the assembled leaders, having just finished his report about the human encounter. The silence that followed was heavy with fear and uncertainty. "Hi." Counselor Zathara, the eldest member of the council, spoke first. "Commander, are you certain about these findings? This species sounds too dangerous to exist." "I wish I could say otherwise, High Counselor, but all our data confirms it. The humans are a warrior species unlike anything we have encountered." Counselor Nexton, who led their military forces, leaned forward in his seat. "If they are as dangerous as you claim, perhaps we should destroy them before they become a greater threat." "With respect, Counselor," Vexstar replied, "I do not believe that is possible. Their ship alone could match our entire fleet. And according to our analysis, they have many more ships." High Counselor Zathara raised one of her four hands for silence. "There is another option. We could test them. Send a probe to see how they respond to different scenarios." "What kind of test?" asked Counselor Melfi, who oversaw their science division. "A combat simulation. We create artificial threats and observe how these humans respond. If they are truly as capable as Commander Vexstar believes, they will survive. If not, the problem solves itself." Vexstar felt uncomfortable with the idea. "High Counselor, creating false threats could be seen as an act of war. Only if they discover the deception. Our technology is advanced enough to make the simulation appear real." The council voted and the decision was made. Within days, a fleet of automated ships was dispatched to the region where the humans were patrolling. These ships would create various combat scenarios to test human capabilities without revealing Zephyrian involvement. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison was reviewing reports in his ready room aboard the Defiance. The encounter with the aliens had been on his mind for weeks. His crew had performed well, but he knew they might face unknown threats in the future. Lieutenant Hayes entered the room. "Captain, we are receiving distress signals from the mining colony on Kepler Station. They report unknown ships attacking their facilities." Morrison stood up immediately. "How far?" 6 hours at maximum speed, sir. Set course for Kepler Station. All hands to battle stations." Within minutes, the Defiance was racing through space toward the colony. Morrison called his senior staff to the bridge for a briefing. "What do we know about the attacking ships?" he asked. Hayes consulted her display. "Unknown configuration, Captain? They do not match any species in our database. The colonists report at least 12 vessels of varying sizes." Chief Engineer Carter looked up from his station. "Captain, I have been analyzing the distress signal. Something about it seems strange." "Explain." "The signal is very detailed. Usually people under attack can only send basic help messages. But this includes tactical information, ship specifications, and exact coordinates. It is almost like someone wanted us to have all this information." Morrison frowned. Something did feel odd about the situation, but colonists were in danger. He could not ignore a distress call, even if it might be a trap. "Maintain course," he ordered, "but stay alert. This could be an ambush." As the Defiance approached Kepler Station, the crew could see explosions and weapons fire in the distance. The colony's defense platforms were firing at unknown ships that moved in strange patterns around the station. "Tactical analysis," Morrison ordered. Hayes studied her sensors. 12 enemy vessels confirmed. They appeared to be using energy weapons similar to what we encountered with the Zephyrians. But their tactics are different. How different? They are not trying to destroy the colony, Captain. They are testing its defenses, probing for weaknesses. Morrison walked to the center of the bridge. His instincts were screaming that this was not a normal attack. But real people were being shot at, and that was all that mattered. Red alert, all weapons ready. Target the lead enemy vessel. The Defiance burst from hyperspace like an angry predator. Her weapon systems came online instantly, and her first salvo caught the attacking ships completely by surprise. 3 enemy vessels were destroyed before they could react. Enemy ships are turning to engage us, Hayes reported. They are forming a battle line, Morrison smiled grimly. Let them come. All batteries, continuous fire. Engineering? Give me everything. The engines have. What followed was a masterclass in human combat tactics. The Defiance did not simply trade shots with the enemy. Instead, Morrison used his ship's superior speed and maneuverability to attack from unexpected angles. When the enemy tried to surround him, he used the colony's defense platforms as cover. When they spread out to avoid his heavy guns, he concentrated fire on isolated ships. When they grouped together for mutual protection, he fired through their formation and used their own ships as obstacles. Engineer Carter rerouted power from non-essential systems to boost weapon output. Hayes coordinated with the colony's defenders to create crossfire patterns. Communications Officer Bell jammed enemy communications to prevent coordination. The human crew worked together like parts of a single organism. Each person anticipated what the others needed and provided it without being asked. Their years of training and combat experience showed in every decision. Within 30 minutes, half the enemy fleet was destroyed. The remaining ships tried to retreat, but Morrison was not finished with them. Pursuit course, he ordered. Do not let them escape. The Defiance chased the fleeing ships through an asteroid field. Morrison used the asteroids as cover and weapons, positioning his ship so that enemy fire would hit the rocks instead of his hull. He even used the ship's gravity projectors to redirect asteroids into enemy vessels. Captain, Hayes called out. The remaining enemy ships have stopped retreating. They are taking defensive positions behind a large asteroid. They want to make a stand, Morrison observed. Fine. Carter, can you overload one of our torpedo warheads? Yes, sir. But it would create a massive explosion. Do it, Hayes. Target that asteroid. We are going to crack it open. The overloaded torpedo struck the asteroid and split it into thousands of fragments. The enemy ships, suddenly exposed and pelted with debris, were easy targets for the Defiances. Guns. When the battle was over, not a single enemy ship remained functional. The Defiance had destroyed an entire fleet while suffering only minor damage. Light years away, the Freyan observers watched the combat footage with growing amazement and terror. The test had been designed to challenge the humans with superior numbers and defensive positions. Instead, the humans had turned every disadvantage into an advantage. How did they do that? Science Officer Krell asked in wonder. Adaptation, replied Commander Vexstar. They saw what they were facing and instantly modified their tactics. They used everything around them as a weapon. The footage showed Morrison coordinating his crew, Carter rerouting ship systems in real time, and Hayes turning defensive platforms into offensive weapons. The humans had not just won the battle, they had dominated it. Commander, Krell said quietly, we sent 12 ships against 1 human vessel. The humans destroyed all 12 without taking serious damage. I noticed. Sir, our military advisors designed that scenario to be unwinnable. No single ship should have been able to defeat those odds. Vexstar studied the tactical breakdown. The humans had used advanced strategies he had never seen before. They fought like they had been facing these exact opponents for years, not minutes. There is something else, Krell continued. Watch how they responded to the distress call. The recording showed the Defiance's approach to the battle. They suspected it might be a trap, but they came anyway. They were willing to risk their lives for strangers. That makes them more dangerous, not less, Vexstar observed. A species that fights for others as well as themselves will have many allies. Back at Kepler Station, Morrison was receiving thanks from the colony administrator. The mining operation had been saved and not a single colonist had been killed. "Captain, we cannot thank you enough," the administrator said over the communication channel. "Those ships appeared from nowhere and started attacking. We thought we were going to die." "I'm just doing our job," Morrison replied. "Do you have any idea who they were?" "No, sir. We had never seen ships like that before. Their weapons were advanced, but their tactics seemed strange. Almost like they were testing us instead of trying to destroy us." Morrison nodded. The same thought had occurred to him during the battle. The enemy had been capable of destroying the colony quickly, but they had drawn the fight out, as if they wanted to see how the defenders would respond. "Keep your sensors active," Morrison advised. "If those ships belong to a larger fleet, they might return." As the Defiance left Kepler Station, Morrison gathered his senior staff in the briefing room. "Good work today, everyone. But I want to discuss something that has been bothering me." "The tactics, sir?" Hayes asked. "Exactly. Those ships fought like they were studying us, not trying to kill us. I think we were being tested." Carter nodded. "The weapon signatures were similar to those Zephyrian ships we encountered last month, but not identical," Bell added. "The technology was related, but not the same." Morrison stood up and walked to the viewport. Outside, space looked peaceful, but he knew better. Captain Morrison stood in his ready room, staring at a star chart that showed the locations of recent mysterious attacks. 3 more colonies had reported encounters with unknown ships in the past week. Each time the Defiance had responded, and each time the enemy had fought just long enough to test human capabilities before retreating or being destroyed. A soft chime indicated someone was requesting entry. "Come in." Lieutenant Hayes entered, carrying a datapad with her latest analysis. "Captain, I have finished reviewing all the combat data from our recent encounters. The pattern is clear now." Morrison gestured for her to sit down. "Tell me, sir." "We are definitely being tested. Each attack has been designed to examine a different aspect of our military capabilities. The first tested our response time and firepower. The second tested our tactical flexibility. The third tested our willingness to protect non-military targets. And what conclusion would our observers reach?" Hayes looked uncomfortable. "That humans are extremely dangerous, sir. We have won every engagement despite being outnumbered. We adapt quickly to new threats. And we fight harder when protecting others than when protecting ourselves." Morrison nodded slowly. He had reached the same conclusion. Someone was studying humanity, and they were probably not pleased with what they had learned. "Captain," Hayes continued, "there is something else." Communications Officer Bell detected some unusual transmissions during the last battle. Short bursts of data being sent to unknown receivers. Battle reports. "Yes, sir." "Someone has been watching our fights and sending detailed information elsewhere." Morrison walked to his viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an alien species was deciding whether humanity was friend or foe. And based on what they had seen, he suspected they were leaning toward foe. "Hayes, prepare the ship for a long-range mission. I think it is time we had another conversation with our mysterious observers." Light years away, Commander Vextar was presenting his final report to the Zephyrian Council. The test results were spread across holographic displays throughout the chamber, and the silence was even heavier than before. "The humans passed every test," Vextar reported. "Not only did they survive scenarios designed to be impossible, they excelled at them. They are tactically brilliant, technologically advanced, and completely ruthless when threatened." High Counselor Zethara studied the combat footage with obvious distress. "How many ships did we lose in these tests?" 47 vessels, High Counselor. All destroyed by a single human warship." The council chamber erupted in nervous whispers. Counselor Nexton, their military leader, stood up abruptly. "That is impossible. No single ship could defeat those odds." "I have reviewed the data personally," Vextar replied. "The humans use tactics we have never seen. They turn every weakness into a strength. They use their environment as a weapon. They coordinate their actions with a precision that suggests telepathic communication, though our scans confirm they are not telepathic. Science Officer Krell, who had been invited to address the council, activated another holographic display. Honored counselors, we have discovered something else about these humans. They do not just fight for themselves. The display showed footage from the Kepler station. Battle. When the mining colony was attacked, the human ship immediately responded. They risked their lives for people they had never met. This suggests that an attack on any human settlement would bring their entire military to respond. Counselor Melfi leaned forward. How large is their military? Unknown, but growing rapidly, Krell replied. We have detected at least 50 ships similar to the one we encountered. They are building more stations, establishing new colonies, and expanding their territory every year. High Counselor Zethara considered this information carefully. Commander, Vexstar, in your professional opinion, what should we do about these humans? High Counselor, I believe we have 3 options. We can try to destroy them before they become more powerful. We can avoid them completely, or we can attempt to make them our allies. Which do you recommend? Vexstar was quiet for a long moment. I do not believe we can destroy them. Their military capabilities are too advanced, and they learn from every encounter. Avoiding them is possible now, but they are expanding rapidly. Eventually our territories will overlap. That leaves alliance. Yes. High Counselor, but an alliance with humans would be unlike any diplomatic relationship we have ever had. They do not think like other species. They prepare for war even during peace. They would be powerful allies, but also unpredictable ones. The council debated for hours. Some members wanted to mobilize their entire fleet for a preemptive strike. Others argued for immediate withdrawal from human space. A few suggested attempting diplomatic contact. Finally, High Counselor Zethara called for silence. We will send an official diplomatic mission to make contact with the humans. Commander Vexstar will lead this mission, since he has the most experience with their species. High Counselor, Vexstar said carefully, what if they refuse our offer of alliance? Then we will know where we stand. 3 days later, a small Zephyrian fleet approached the location where they had first encountered the human warship. As expected, the Defiance was still patrolling the area. Captain Morrison had been waiting for their return. Incoming transmission from the alien fleet, Communications Officer Bell reported. Put them on screen. Commander Vexstar appeared on the main viewer. He looked nervous but determined. Captain Morrison, I am Commander Vexstar of the Zephyrian Exploration Fleet. I come with an official message from my government. Morrison stood in the center of his bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. I am listening, Commander. The Zephyrian Council has sent me to propose a formal alliance between our peoples. We believe that cooperation would benefit both our civilizations. And what brought about this change of heart? Morrison asked. Last time we met, you seemed eager to leave? Vexstar hesitated. We have observed your people's capabilities, Captain. We recognize that humans are a formidable species. We would prefer to have you as friends rather than enemies. Morrison smiled, but it was not entirely friendly. Commander, are you the ones who have been testing us? The mysterious attacks on our colonies? The alien's skin changed color slightly. Captain, those were necessary to understand your capabilities. We needed to know what kind of species we were dealing with. And what did you learn? That humans are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered, but also that you fight to protect others, not just yourselves. This suggests that you might be trustworthy allies. Morrison walked closer to the screen. Commander, let me explain something about humans. We do not like being tested without our knowledge. We do not like being manipulated. And we especially do not like it when innocent people are put in danger for someone else's experiments. Vexstar's color changed again, this time to deep purple. Captain, I apologize for the deception. But surely you understand that we needed to evaluate the threat you might pose? The threat we might pose? Morrison's voice grew harder. Commander, your people scanned our ship without permission. tested us without our knowledge, and endangered civilians to study our reactions? From our perspective, you are the threat. The bridge of the Defiance was completely silent. Every crew member was focused on the conversation that could determine the future of human-alien relations. Captain, Vexstar said carefully, what would it take for humans to consider an alliance with the Zephyrian people? Morrison considered the question. Respect, Commander, mutual respect. You treat us as equals, and we will do the same. You share information honestly, and we will reciprocate. You threaten our people or our allies, and we will respond with force. And if we agree to these terms, then humanity would be willing to explore a relationship with your people. We are not looking for enemies, Commander, but we will not be anyone's subjects or test animals. Vexstar nodded slowly. I will convey your terms to the Council, but I must ask, Captain, if we become allies, would humans be willing to help defend Zephyrian territory? If you are genuine allies, yes, humans protect their friends. Even at the cost of human lives? Morrison's expression grew serious. Commander, humans understand something that your people apparently do not. Sometimes the cost of peace is war. Sometimes you have to fight to protect what matters. We are willing to pay that price. The conversation continued for another hour, with both sides establishing the basic framework for possible cooperation. When it ended, Vexstar felt cautiously optimistic. Captain, he said as they prepared to close the channel, may I ask what you think of this proposal? Morrison looked directly into the camera. Commander, your people are explorers and traders. You build ships to discover new worlds and make friends. Humans respect that. But remember what you learned about us. We build ships to fight and win. We hope we can be friends, but we are ready to be enemies if necessary. After the communication ended, Vexstar sat alone in his command chamber. The humans had offered friendship, but they had also made their position clear. They would not be pushed around, manipulated, or controlled. Perhaps that was exactly what the galaxy needed. A species strong enough to defend itself and its allies, but wise enough to prefer peace when possible.